Hi, it's Summer, and today I have some fall book recommendations for you. I'm not gonna lie, I have a lot on this list. Some of them are kind of like cliche, and I'm sure everybody is like, duh, those are obviously fall books. I've already read them. But I had to put them on this list just in case it's the first time someone's hearing about it. Or maybe it gives someone the extra push to pick them up because some of these are some of my all-time favorite books. I'm going to start with the books that I don't own on my physical TBR so that I don't forget to mention them. The God of Endings by Jacqueline Holland, or Jacqueline Holland, I don't know for sure. This book basically follows Miss Honey from Matilda, but if she was a vampire. In one perspective, you see her more current day set in the 80s, and she has an art school for children, and she has kind of a special connection with one of the kids in her class. But the other perspectives that you get are of her growing up all the way from the early 1800s, becoming a vampire, and just like her whole entire life leading up to the 80s, and you literally spend her whole life with her pretty much. When I think of vampires, I think of Twilight and Vampire Diaries, very like morally gray and sexy, but that's not really the vibe of this one. It's like gentle found family vampires. There's still some creepy stuff and like blood and murder and stuff like that, but it's just softer. Also, if you combined The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, The Wishing Game, and House of Hunger all together, it would be this book. So if you liked any of those books, or all of them together, you should read this one. Next I have How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. This one is following the main character returning home after her parents suddenly pass away. She's not on great terms with her brother, and she has to work with him to kind of like figure out all of the funeral arrangements and taking care of their house before they sell it and stuff like that. They both have really different ideas of how they want to do everything, and so they're butting heads a lot. So along with exploring like family dynamics and stuff, their parents' house that they're trying to clean out and sell is haunted, and there's lots of creepy puppets and dolls, stuffed squirrels. Grady Hendrix is a fun author to read from because his writing style is very funny and campy, but also he writes some of the most disturbing and creepy horror scenes. So it's kind of a mix of completely opposite things, but it totally works. I would say to even give this one a try if you haven't liked his other books in the past. I read My Best Friend's Exorcism from him last year, and it was just okay. And then I gave this one a try and loved it. Next I have a book that I kind of already mentioned, and it's House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. This is kind of like a historical fantasy. In the society that we're following in this book, the rich and elite people think that blood can cure illnesses and keep them younger, and so they hire young women called blood maids, and they drink their blood. So the main character that we're following is not doing very well. She's really poor and she's really desperate, so she decides to become a blood maid. She's one of several blood maids that's serving in this house, so you follow her interactions with them, with the woman who hired her. It's basically like lesbian vampires. I loved the setting and it was very atmospheric. Next I have A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. This is one of my new all-time favorite books. It's definitely a favorite book that I read this year. I think it's technically middle grade, and it's very much cozy fantasy, but it also has some very kind of like gritty, gross topics that it talks about. Like there's one scene in particular that I'm thinking of, and it's just gross, but there's also just a lot of cozy stuff going on. In this world there's magic, but most of it is just kind of smaller magic that's almost kind of useless. The main character that we're following lives with her aunt and uncle, and she works in their bakery. She's one of the few people that has magic, and also magic in this world is very like specific. So her magic, she's only able to control and manipulate bread dough and other types of like bakery dough and stuff. So when she's making stuff for the bakery, she can make sure that stuff doesn't burn. She makes the gingerbread men get up and dance. But one day when she's going to open up the bakery, someone is found dead there, and she's kind of brought in for questioning and stuff. She goes on this big adventure. She finds a little sidekick along the way. There's just lots of really quirky and cute things about this book. I loved all of the characters. If you want a book that will make you feel happy and hopeful and cozy, that will make you laugh, that'll make you cry, like this is it. It's just so wholesome and quirky, and I just absolutely loved reading it. Next I have kind of a cliche one, but I just had to mention it. It's Verity by Colleen Hoover. This book was so much fun to read. It's about this woman who's going to be ghostwriting the rest of a really popular series because the author can no longer finish it because she was in a terrible accident. So to gather up like all of the notes and stuff to see where the author Verity was planning on having the rest of the series go, she gets invited to their house by Verity's husband, and she's able to like go through the office and stuff to get all of the notes, all of the research and stuff. But while she's going through the office and cleaning it out and stuff and getting what she needs, she finds an unpublished manuscript that Verity wrote that is shocking. And there's also some other stuff going on like in the house that she's staying in. That's only a little bit of what this book is about. It's so entertaining. It's such a fast-paced read. It just keeps you guessing the whole time, and it's such a fun book. All right, next I have The Book Eaters by Suni Dean. I recently read this and really liked it. This one follows a society of people called the Book Eaters, and they literally eat books as food. Also, whatever information is in the books that they eat, they gain the knowledge and the information from that book. Every once in a while though, within the Book Eater Society, a mind eater will be born, and instead of eating books, they eat the minds of people. So that kind of comes into play with the story as well. In this one, we're following the main character Devin, and she's on the run from the Book Eaters with her son. This is just dark and unique. I've never read anything like this. It was so creative and thought-provoking. It has a lot of themes of feminism in it, and it was just really interesting to see how the Book Eaters like functioned and how their society worked. I feel like the vibes of this one are perfect for the fall. After that, I have The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This book feels like you're just in a dream, which is very fitting because there's a lot to do with dreams in this series. It's YA, and it follows this group of boys called the Raven Boys and their friend Blue, who lives in a house of psychics. There's magical forests and Welsh kings, there's ghosts and ley lines. When I think of atmospheric books, this series is at the very top. This has such a distinct setting and feeling that you get when you're reading it. The descriptions that you get just really put you in this world. The friend group and the characters are also just so good. You definitely need to check this out if you haven't already. Next up, I have Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This follows Elizabeth, who is working in a magical library. All of the books and grimoires that are in this library are magical. It says, if provoked, they transform into grotesque monsters of ink and leather. One day, when a really nasty grimoire escapes, she has to get help from her enemy, who's a sorcerer, to put everything back to normal. So it's enemies to lovers. The magic vibes are amazing. The sorcerer, his name is Nathaniel, and he has like a demon servant, and I loved that character so much. This one is the perfect thing to read as a book lover because like magical books. Also, it's so swoony. I really love this one, and I think that if you're a fan of like From Blood and Ash, Court of Thorns and Roses, you know, all of like the big popular fantasy books, this kind of has those same vibes. But it's a standalone, so you don't have to commit to like a whole entire series. Next up, I have a horror book. This is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. I love this cover and I love this book. I feel like it's best to go into this without really knowing anything. Like, don't read the synopsis because it'll just make it way more fun. I'll at least tell you though that the main character is named Vera, and she's returning to her childhood home to take care of her mother, who is on her deathbed. She does not have a good relationship with her mom. I think they've been estranged pretty much up until this point, and there's lots of family secrets that unravel. I feel like this is a really polarizing book. I know a lot of people that really didn't like this one, but it's an all-time favorite book of mine, and I feel like even if you're just a little bit intrigued by this one, you should just give it a try. This next one is actually also a daughter returning home. It's Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This is an all-time top favorite book of mine. So good. If you like The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, you absolutely have to read this. Has very similar vibes. This one follows the main character named Maggie, and it says 25 years ago, she and her parents, Ewan and Jess, moved into Bainbury Hall, a rambling Victorian estate in the Vermont woods. They spent 20 days there before fleeing in the dead of night, an ordeal Ewan later recounted in his horror memoir, House of Horrors. His tale of ghostly happenings and encounters with malevolent spirits became a worldwide phenomenon. Maggie has lived in the shadow of her father's book her whole life, but after her dad passes away, she inherits Bainbury Hall from him. She decides that she's going to go back to Bainbury Hall and renovate it and try to sell it, but when she gets there, some really weird things start happening. One of my absolute favorite things about this book is that it has dual perspectives. In one perspective, we're following Maggie as she's like renovating the house, but in between her chapters, we're getting chapters of her father's book, recounting what happened in this house when Maggie was a kid. This book is just the perfect book, honestly. I love it. If you only read one thing from this list, please have it be this. It's amazing. Next, I have a very polarizing book, and that's Bunny by Mona Awad. This one takes place at a university, and we're following the main character, Samantha. She gets invited to join this group of girls called the Bunnies. It's a group of rich girls that call each other Bunny, and they seem to move and speak as one. They're really weird, but this book just follows her experience, kind of like being in their inner circle. This book is so weird, it's a fever dream. So this one isn't for everyone. It was definitely for me. So if this sounds even just the tiniest bit interesting, I think you should give it a try. Next, I have Shady Hollow by Juno Black. This is a cozy mystery. It takes place in this town called Shady Hollow, and all of the characters that live in this town are animals. They can talk, they have jobs, they wear clothes. The main character that we're following in this one is Vera Vixen. She's a reporter, and she's trying to get to the bottom of a murder that recently happened in their town. This one is really cute and unique and cozy, and it's really fun to like hear about all the different characters. And there's also a whole entire character list included in the beginning of the book, which is so nice. But this is just a really fun, quirky, cozy mystery story. Next up, I have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is dark academia set at Yale University. We're following some secret societies that operate at Yale. The main character in this one is Alex Stern, and she can see ghosts. She gets hired by Yale to use her ability to aid in the practices of the secret societies. I love Alex as the main character. Her backstory is really interesting to hear about. I loved all of like the magic, occult things that were happening. The dark academia vibes were awesome. If you're planning on going into this one though, definitely keep a character list and a list of all of the houses and what they do, because that's something that I really wish I would have done when I first read this. I couldn't have a fall recommendations video without mentioning my favorite book, The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This is such a whimsical, beautifully written book. There are so many good quotes in this book. The writing is very descriptive and flowery, which might be not a good thing for some people, but it's something that I love in books. This one could probably also be classified as dark academia because it does follow him going to university for a little bit. I have the hardest time saying what this book is about, and I feel like the back just says it perfectly, so I'm just gonna read that. It says, when Zachary Rollins stumbles across a mysterious book containing details from his own life among its pages, it leads him on a quest unlike any other. Following the clues inside, he is guided to a masquerade ball, a dangerous secret club, and finally to an ancient subterranean library. It has multiple books within this book that you get to read from. A girl who can paint magical doors, bees and keys and swords and owls and time and fate. I take back what I said about Home Before Dark. If you're gonna pick up one book from this list, please have it be this one. Please read my favorite book. It's so good. Next up is another one of my favorite books. It's The Cartographers by Pung Shepherd. This is also dark academia, which I feel like is perfect for this time of year. This one is about Nell, who is estranged from her father after he fired her from her job at the New York Public Library, I think like over 10 years ago. She's returning back to the library though because her father was recently found murdered in his office. And his murder kind of seems like it's tied back to this map that got her fired in the first place from the library. So she's trying to kind of like trace some clues and get to the bottom of what's going on. I really should have just said this is dark academia about magic maps and left it at that. But I guess now you also have a little bit of a synopsis to go with it. But this is such a cool book. It's unlike anything that I've read before. I feel like I've said this word a million times in this video, but the vibes were so good. Next up, I have Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I couldn't have a fall recommendations list without including this. It says, after a lifetime of bounties and bloodshed, Viv is hanging up her sword for the last time. She's deciding to give up her life of battling and open up a coffee shop. You get to see her fixing up the shop, hiring people to work there, figuring out how to make the perfect cup of coffee. It's just the coziest thing ever, and it's also queer. This one really is just like so cute and cozy, and it's the ultimate fall read. All right, and I think this is the last of my actual like novels. This is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This is also fantasy. Also, this is like such a floppy book. That's amazing. This one follows the main character. I think that you pronounce her name as Agnieszka. I think that's how the audiobook narrator said it. She lives in this quiet village, but it's surrounded by this malevolent wood. It says her people rely on the cold-driven wizard, only known as the dragon, to keep the wood's dark forces at bay, but he demands a terrible price for his assistance. Every 10 years, one young woman must be handed over to serve him without question. Agnieszka and the whole town thinks that they know who the dragon is going to pick next, but he surprises everyone when he picks Agnieszka instead. And so we just follow her living in this tower with the dragon. I loved the way that magic was described in this one, and I feel like it's just such a good fall fantasy book. My battery's gonna die because I've been taking forever to talk about all of these books. The next few books are manga and graphic novels, and I'm just gonna try to go through them like rapid fire. I have Shiver and Uzumaki by Junji Ito. These are horror manga, very creepy, they have jump scares. Then I have Hooky, it's about twin witches that miss the bus for magic school. Mooncakes, it's cozy and magical and queer. Garlic and the Vampire is about animated vegetables. And a very brave little garlic that goes to save everyone. This is The Seance Tea Party. It's about a girl who befriends a ghost and it's coming of age. It's also set around Halloween. This one is Pumpkinheads. It's also set around Halloween, and it's following these two friends on the last night working at this corn maze or farm before they each head off their own ways to go to college. And it's also Friends to Lovers. I'm so sorry that I had to rush there at the end. Those are such cozy graphic novels though. They're all so fun and perfect for this time of year. If you made it to the end of the video, leave some kind of fall or Halloween spooky emoji in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.